Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're going to go a little retro today with the Nintendo 64. I know a lot of you have these sitting around your house and you're probably thinking about hooking them up to your modern HD television. And of course there's a lot of ways to do that, including just using the composite output. But you might want to get the video converted to HDMI and upscaled to 1080p. And the other day I got into inexpensive solutions for doing that. This one from Pound and this one from a company called RuntoGOL. And both of these plug directly into your Nintendo 64 and give you 1080p out the HDMI plug on here. But are these any good, and are they in line with some of the more expensive solutions like the awesome Retrotink 5X and 2X devices that we have looked at with other retro consoles? And we're going to dive into this in just a second, but I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that both of these cheap converter boxes came in free of charge via the Amazon Vine program. However, nobody is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. I did buy the Nintendo 64 years ago with my own funds, along with the EverDrive cartridge here and the two Retrotink devices I also purchased with my own funds. So let's get into it now and see if these converter boxes are worth paying any money for. Now let's start off though with the more expensive solution so you can see what the best possible image quality can look like out of this unmodified Nintendo 64. And on the Retrotink side, you've got basically two options. One is to look at one of their line doubling products like this one. This is called the Retrotink 2X. This particular model is not manufactured anymore, but he's got a new version of this called the Retrotink 2X Pro, which does pretty much the same thing. This costs typically about $140, but they also have one called the 2X Mini that sells for $90 that doesn't have RGB inputs on it, but does have composite and S-Video. Today what we're going to be doing with the Nintendo 64 is outputting S-Video, which is the best quality video I can get out of this stock system. The other option is the more expensive upscaler that they have called the 5X, and this one will not only bring in signals from component and composite and S-Video and S-Cart, but it will also upconvert it to 1080p along with a lot of cool filtering effects that you can add to the mix. Both of these devices add practically zero lag. This one a little bit depending on how you configure it, but the line doublers here really don't have much of a lag penalty beyond what your TV is offering. I was having trouble capturing footage off of the 2X here, so what I'm going to do now is hook up the Nintendo 64 to the 5X and see what 1080p out of the best device will look like. Now to do this, what I'm going to do is connect my Nintendo 64 using this S-Video cable that I bought on Amazon. You got to be really careful about these S-Video cables because most of them are pretty lousy, and I'm expecting to see that this one may not be the best either. And the reason is that a lot of these cable manufacturers actually run the composite signal over the S-Video connector, and you don't gain much of an image quality advantage from it. So I will put some links in the video description as to where you can find better cables than what I'm going to end up with here. But this one was rather inexpensive for this project here, and I think there will still be a noticeable difference between the Retrotink 5X and some of the other ones here. So let me get this hooked up and let's see what it looks like. All right, so we've got Mario 64 here running on my Nintendo 64. We're outputting S-Video into the Retrotink 5X, which is sending video at 1080p out to my video system. I'm not doing much in the way of post-processing on the image. One of the things that the Retrotink can do is add scan lines and other CRT-like image effects that make the image actually look better and more like a traditional television. But I like to kind of run things sharp, and this is what we're going to get out of the other two devices we're going to look at in a second. One thing you'll notice, because of the mode that I'm running in, that the banister and the railing back here are very fuzzy. And that's partly due to the lousy cable that I'm using here, but also to the fact that these games only ran at like 320 by 240 for their resolution. And there's only so many pixels that you can upscale from that very small amount of data. And these games, remember, were really designed for CRT TVs, which were much more forgiving for this kind of thing. And I think that's often the best way, in my opinion, to play a lot of retro games, especially the Nintendo 64 and some of the other 3D systems from the early and mid-90s. So this is the best possible image quality that I'm going to get today out of this unmodified system. Now I want to take a look at some of the less expensive solutions. And we're going to start off here with the RuntoGOL, which is the least costly and unfortunately also the worst looking. Let me plug it in and I'll show you all the problems I have with it. All right, so we've got the RuntoGOL hooked up now. This is the HDMI output. This is a USB power source. It does require a separate power source to operate the electronics inside. And when you turn off the game console, this box will still be on. So I would suggest pulling the power out when you're not using it. And as you can see here, it connects directly to our Nintendo 64. This is what Mario 64 looks like. You will notice that it has stretched the game out because it doesn't put the game in its proper aspect ratio like we saw on the Retrotink a second ago. So everything's going to get squished, and there's really no way to unsquish it. You can set your TV to do the 4:3 aspect ratio, but that's not ideal here. So this does not preserve the original aspect ratio of the game, which was square and not rectangular. So the result here is that Mario looks quite squished. As you can see here, the image doesn't look as clear either. Even when we get closer to that banister like we did before, you can see it just doesn't look as good. I suspect that this is pulling video out of the composite output, not the S-video on the Nintendo 64. And this also adds a good amount of input lag, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, in the marketing for this, they did say that there was a switch on the side here to adjust the aspect ratio, but this switch doesn't do that. What it does is it switches between 1080p and 720p. I found when I hit the switch, the image looks exactly the same. So I think it's probably rendering at 720p and just doing an upscale of that 720p image to a 1080p output as opposed to actually upscaling the image from the Nintendo 64 itself. So this one is one of those you get what you pay for kind of deals here. It does work, but it doesn't work very well. So let's take a look now and see how the pound cable stacks up. All right, so we got the pound cable hooked up now. As you can see, it plugs directly into the back of the Nintendo 64. It does require a separate USB power source to operate, just like the RuntoGOL here does. And then it's got the HDMI output. And check it out, the images, surprisingly, are pretty good on it. I'm really pleased with what this looks like. I have some issues, which I'll get to in a minute, but as far as how it looks, I think it looks nice. This is 720p, not 1080p, but whatever TV you're plugging it into is going to kind of upscale the image to its native output resolution anyhow. So it's good. I think it's passable. I think if you are a casual user and want something cheap and quick and easy to play a little bit of your old Nintendo 64 on your modern television, this is going to get you there. We've got the proper aspect ratio. It's not stretching everything out of proportion, and it just looks and plays good. Now, what this one does, unlike the RuntoGOL here, is it grabs the video from the S-video output pin on the Nintendo. So you're actually getting the better quality image going in. You can toggle between S-video and AV with a switch here, but there's no reason on a US device to run it in AV mode. I would leave it in S-video to get the best image output like you see here. I suspect the reason why the switch is on this is because the European consoles are a little different in how they output video. And so if you have a PAL console, I think you got to put it in AV mode. But in the US, leave it on S-video. There is no reason to switch that switch over there. The problem you're going to run into, though, with both the Pound and the RuntoGOL is input lag. So the input lag on these two inexpensive devices is almost double what it is on the Retrotink, which means that games that require a lot of precision might be a little troublesome here because you're not able to react or have your reactions register on screen as quickly as they might have on an old analog CRT where you had practically no input lag. And your television will also introduce some lag as well. So for the best results, if you do want to go with one of the lower cost options, make sure your TV is in game mode, and that will give you the best chance of playing successfully. But if you found yourself really good at a certain game back in the day and suddenly you're not so good at it anymore, it's likely due to the input lag problem. And that's something you just can't get away from with one of these cheap devices. So one solution to this might be getting a CRT television and hooking up your Nintendo the way you played it 25 years ago. And that will be the absolute best experience. And you might actually end up ahead there because I bet you could find people that want to give you money to take their old television away. But if you wanted to go down the road of playing these games on your modern television without modifying your console and spending hundreds of dollars on upscalers, the pound cable here is one that I would actually recommend. And I was not anticipating recommending this at all going into it, just knowing what some of these low-cost devices look and play like. But if you can live with the input lag, the image quality here is definitely passable, in fact, a little bit more than passable. Now, a great resource for getting the most out of your retro game console is RetroRGB.com, run by my friend Bob, and he's got some great resources here and some really good learning materials to kind of get the ins and outs of all the intricacies of getting your console working the best in this modern era. And as you can see here, the console info section has a whole bunch of different retro consoles that you can learn about. And if we jump into the Nintendo 64, Bob's got a great getting started video along with a whole bunch of different things that you can look at for both modifying your console, but also what you can get away with without having to modify it. So definitely check out RetroRGB.com. So lots of fun stuff here with our Nintendo 64. And again, I was really surprised that the pound cable was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Remember, lots of input lag here, so that's going to be an issue. But again, if you wanted something super casual and super inexpensive, this is a good way to go. But otherwise, I would suggest taking a look at the Retrotink hardware. Unfortunately, at the time I'm shooting this video, the lower cost Retrotink devices are not available due to part shortages. So check over at retrotink.com from time to time to see if things have opened up again so you can get one of those lower cost devices. But if you're looking to do a lot of capturing of video and all sorts of other cool stuff from old VCRs and game consoles, the 5X I think is a really good investment. It is by far one of the best scalers out there. He's got a new 4K version on the way, but for 1080p, this is a great solution and one that I use quite a bit in a whole bunch of different use cases beyond gaming. That's going to do it for now. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Brian Parker, Chris Allegretta, Hot Sauce and Video Games, Logic KGR, Tom Albrecht, and Amda Brown. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.